Hello, my name's Dr. Andy Fear. I work here at Manchester University in the Department of Classics and Ancient History, and among my interests are those of ancient military history and also the history of Roman Britain. And I just want to briefly talk to you about the uprising of a lady, usually called Boadicea. I see no problems with calling her Boadicea. You can call her Boadicea if you want. It really doesn't matter very much. This, of course, is a lady who led an uprising against Rome. We shouldn't be deceived by the Romans. It's not a rebellion. Boadicea's country had never been part of the Roman Empire. She was an ally, technically, or her husband had been an ally of Rome, and the Romans, on his death, decided to annex her country. So, just as we wouldn't call the patriots who rose up in Hungary in 1956 or in Czechoslovakia in 1968 against the Soviet Union rebels, it makes no sense at all to call Boadicea a rebel either. What we know of her, of course, only comes from our Roman sources, and we've got two of those. The earlier one is the one everybody reads, written by Tacitus, and Tacitus has an interest in this. His father-in-law, who he seems to have been very fond of, Agricola, was a serving officer in Britain at the time of the uprising, an ADC, a fairly senior officer in one of the legions at the time. The other source, which is less well known, is that of Cassius Dio, who writes about this much later at the beginning of the 3rd century AD. The two sources are very interesting because sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree quite violently. Both of them are not really interested in Britain per se. They are interested in Boadicea because she is a woman. The Roman mind finds it quite hard to conceptualise a woman as the leader of a nation, and both of them, Dio very explicitly, Tacitus certainly implicitly, wants to make a contrast between as they see a womanish man, the Emperor Nero, leading Rome to rack and ruin, being opposed by a man-like woman, a woman acting with courage in a way that you would only expect a man to do. The final battle is perhaps where the two of sources diverge really very, very sharply. Tacitus's account is a set-piece Roman battle. The commander of the day, one of Tacitus's heroes, Suetonius Paulinus, carefully picks his field of battle. The Britons are goaded into attacking the Romans. Their larger numbers are negated by them being funneled into a narrow place. The Romans then simply overwhelm the Britons with their superior fighting techniques, pin them back on their own baggage train, which arrogantly they brought their women and children to watch what they thought would be a massacre of Romans, and there is general slaughter, much to the satisfaction of Tacitus. Dio, on the other hand, has a much more awkward battle. Suetonius, far from bringing the Britons to battle, is forced to battle by them. He's heavily outnumbered, and this time he's frightened of being surrounded. 3 battle groups, we're told, are formed by the Roman commander, who plunge into the Britons, and at that point almost are overwhelmed. Dio portrays a much more close-run thing, to coin a phrase. The Britons almost win, but in the end they are overwhelmed by the Romans, and again, triumphantly, the Romans overwhelm Boadicea. We're told that in this point she takes poison and she dies. No one knows where this lady finally died. Stonehenge has been foolishly suggested as her final resting place. No one knows where that last stand was. Probably it was somewhere in the Midlands. The Roman commander cut off from the rest of the empire in Wales, coming back down the old Roman road of Watling Street, probably colliding there with Boadicea. But genuinely, we don't know. Ironically, in the Victorian period, King's Cross Station, where the express departs from Hogwarts, was regarded as the battle site. But it's an interesting tale, not only, I think, of resistance to Roman pressure, but also the way that we can see in the Roman world how, to some degree, this is very much a battle of the sexes. And again, when we think about our sources, who should we trust? The nearer one, Tacitus, but with his own set of prejudices, or the further one, Cassius Dio? Is he being anachronistic, or should actually we see this being a much more dangerous moment in Rome's history than sometimes it's portrayed?